Welcome to Candid Conversations. Today we're reinventing the career woman. There are several reasons why we have to change careers, but today our guests are going to teach us how we can navigate life's new path. But first, here they are, Becky Lantry and Gary Brienda. Hey ladies.
Hi,
How are you?
I'm doing great. This is such a great show because a lot of us have had to change careers. When I lost my sight, I had to change my career completely.
Yeah.
And I decided to go back to school as an adult. And I was scared, thinking these 16 and 18-year-olds are going, hey, how you doing, old lady? So I was so nervous, thinking, what are they going to do? What are they going to think?
Yeah.
But it was such an amazing experience.
Wow.
Going back, I had all of my life's experience behind me. It was fantastic. I was able to contribute and add and speak of my experiences, lend to the class. But the hardest part was when the teachers were my same age.
Oh boy.
That was
Yeah.
embarrassing.
That was tough,
my
huh?
God, that was so hard. However, that too turned out to be a great experience because again, of what I knew, I was able to enlighten them. We would have educated arguments, and which I really think helped the class. And I noticed going back in as an adult, I was a much better student.
Right, right. Because that sharing and learning experience, which is really important. I mean, I think too also, I went through a big career change also where I was working, and I was actually in the medical clinic, and I was doing marketing and branding, and I was working 40 plus hours a week and making great money, but I didn't have enough balance in my personal life. And so my career choice in transitioning over was to find work that, you know, could afford me the lifestyle that I did love, but also had that balance where I could have a puppy, which I have now, and hang out with my friends and just be able to explore more of my creative side, which I really wanted to do. So, I mean, there are so many facets to having, moving in a career change track. And all of us have our different stories.
It's so true, so true.
Myself, when I moved to California 33 years ago with a small child, I had to change careers, so that meant going back to school. When I went back to college, my goodness, yes, I was the oldest person in the class, but guess what? I had the highest scores.
Nice.
So really
so take
worked out.
that,
It
kids.
worked out really well, but you know, it was just a whole change of field. I went from being a insurance person to being a person who was actually studying criminal justice. So.
Wow, look at that switch. And then of
big
course, like all
balance.
the skills you have to acquire. Then you were raising a child, you know, being a mother on top of all of that, the hourly management, you know, the time management.
Oh yes.
All of that plays a significant role.
Oh yeah.
That made you the amazing woman that you are.
Yes.
Why, thank you.
Well, come on.
And
it needs to be said.
And well-rounded.
Yes,
That's right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, obviously, changing careers isn't the end of the world. Change is sometimes it's hard for us to deal with, but obviously for us, it was beneficial and all around for all of us. And so today's show, I think, is going to be the same for everybody else. So we'll be right back with our first guest.
Riding a bicycle can seem like child's play.
But only if you're playing indoors.
Riding in the real street has real consequences.
Play it safe. Ride by the rules. Cars and bikes need to play together.
Joining us from Santa Monica College is Vicki Rothman, faculty leader of the Career Services Center. Vicki, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you for inviting me.
We are just so thrilled, and this is such an important subject. Do you notice that there are a lot of women going back to school now?
Well, I think, first I would like to say I thoroughly enjoyed hearing your stories of career change and returning to education.
Thank
I
you.
want everyone to know that the average age of a Santa Monica College student is 28. So even though people feel the 18-year-old, it's really 28.
Oh, that's good to know.
So I've been at the college for about 25 years, and I would say around that time for a number of years we had a huge trend of women returning to college as the divorce rate happened to be very, very high. There are still women returning to education for various reasons, of course having to do with divorce and separation in families, but I don't think that the rate is as high as it used to be.
Okay.
Interesting.
What's the ratio like to men?
That's so interesting. I actually had to just do a report and I cannot remember. I think that we have a few more percentage women on campus than men, but I honestly can't remember the ratio.
Yeah. And this kind of switch, you know, transition that you're seeing in this, Vicki, is Is it because, in addition to this divorce rate, just this hunger for learning and this desire to want to expand your knowledge base, or even learn a language on the side and things of that nature?
I think for a lot of women, they're going, as we grow older, we go through different stages of our own adult development, and people change their minds about what they like and what they want to do.
Yeah, and I mean, I think even now when I look back when I was in school, it's like they say there's like you have 8 to 10 careers in a lifetime. Like the economy, you might have went and studied one thing, but there aren't any jobs in that. So then you go back and you're like, maybe I need to learn this and, you know, get ready, and then you do this for a little while and switch back. And there isn't like, it is that jungle gym. You know, it isn't like this linear ladder anymore.
Yeah, it's coming back. I think for a lot of people, they come back to retool, to get new skills, to go back out into the workforce. That's kind of what I see more now. We have a lot of short-term career certificates that people, and we can apply this to anyone, will come back to SMC, pick up a short-term certificate, because they put that, I literally call it like that's part of your toolbox. And it's a reevaluation of skills. It's a reevaluation of where you are in your life and where do you want to go from there. And that's what I see with a lot of women returning to education.
What are some of the short-term certificates? What kind of?
So we have things from graphic design, early childhood education, and I'm going to say it wrong probably because they change names. We have things in post-production, production. We have accounting, interior architectural design, fashion merchandising. So we do have different things within the business industry. So maybe something in computers. So there's a lot of little things that people can take just a few classes, put those in their back pocket, and then they have that to move forward into the workforce.
Does that cover the certificate? When you say short term, are we talking about 2 semesters, 3 semesters?
So we're looking usually at an average of 4 to 5 classes.
Okay. Okay.
So maybe 12 to 15 units to pick up just a short-term certificate.
Great. So if somebody doesn't have the time or financially isn't prepared to go back to school full time, this is another option for them to put in their toolbox.
Yes, and like many colleges, we're actually trying to offer more classes online. So for a lot of people who are at home and the computer's more accessible, they can now take more classes online. The college is growing that part of our industry.
Wow.
Oh,
Yeah, which is great for like young moms if they need to be home with their toddlers and they need something remote. That makes a lot of sense.
Yes.
What have you seen, Vicki, in terms of like the career the characteristic development of a woman when she educates herself? Like what are some of the attributes you're seeing as they come in and how they go out?
I think what happens is, like you ladies were saying, you were nervous to be back in school. You realized that you really were one of the oldest in the classroom, and yet it became a really empowering experience because you saw that, in fact, you had all this knowledge and about life and social skills that younger people don't have yet from being out in the world, and it ends up being a really empowering position in the classroom because the teacher turns to you for help and support, and the students end up looking up to the women that are in the classroom as both a mother figure, as someone who's had life experience, and so honestly, returning adults to education help our students just as much as having the younger students sort of keeps us all young.
Oh, that's really nice to hear. Now, for a woman who's really looking to just change everything, she needs a completely new career. How would you help her when she comes to see you?
So in our Career Services Center, once you're a student, you're allowed to come in and see our individual career counselors. We're all professionally trained, master degreed. Many of us have been there for a lot of years, so we can see people both individually. And we do offer a 1-unit, 8-week career planning class where we actually go through interest, values, skills, like all the assessments that we would do both individually and in a private practice, but it's in a small group environment. So if any of the women were thinking that maybe that's a way to start thinking about going back into school or what they wanted to do, it's a great way to start.
Oh, that's wonderful. Do you have a set like different tests that they could take, like a career, like the career assessment, like you just mentioned, but something that's geared toward like specific untapped talents? Is there anything like that you can assess?
So the interesting thing is when we combine everything, so we look at people's skills, what they know, what they want to do, and what they want to learn. Values, because that's something else that changes, right? As we get older, our value system changes, and things that were important when we were younger are no longer important, or You know, some women will say, well, I went into this career for the love of it, realizing later what the financial needs of the family were, and thinking, oh, maybe that wasn't the best choice, but now this time I'm going to look because money is more of a value than it was before. So we do a values, and we do something called the Myers-Briggs Personality Inventory
Yes.
type indicator,
Yeah.
which is for a lot of people really, really life-changing. It helps them understand how do they interact with the environment, with the world of work, make decisions, show themselves to the outer world, and that seems to be a real life changer with a lot of people.
No, it definitely is, Vicki. I remember I was talking to ladies earlier about my puppy, and it's like one of those assessment courses was to work with animals, and it was crazy. I never would have thought it because I was so cerebral and scientific. I never would have thought that, but then just what opens up when you go down that track,
Right.
You know, it's magical.
Right. And then when people are looking at their interests, they can decide, is this an interest that I want to do in a hobby, or is this an interest, something that I'd actually want to employ? And so when people come in and see us, those are the kinds of things that we start to talk about in our sessions. We look at family history. We talk about, you know, what it's been like, where they're going, what their thoughts are. You know, a lot of time there's been a lot of pain if something's happened in the home, and we sort of help them work through that while they're thinking about what career options are out there. Because like you said, you take all of those skills and then you kind of you figure out, like, how do I want to use these but in a different way? So you're transferring those skills, and we help people figure out how to make those skills transferable, how to change that resume up so it doesn't look like it gets you back into the same field, but it guides you to a different area.
So kind of like building blocks. You're building upon the skill set that was existing and maybe just moving it in another direction.
See, I would think that because of the economy and the way that the world has become, that most people are part-time, that they would come to this career center because, you know, there are more part-time jobs than there are full-time jobs. But you have to reinvent skills and actually to be able to work the part-time job.
Right, so we call it a portfolio career.
Gotcha.
Where you kind of have your industry, but you do a little work here and you do a little work there. We also call them the freeway flyers in LA because you're flying all over. And it's interesting because sometimes people really love it because it gives them that opportunity to be all around. Then you get that person who really values security, who really does want to be in just that one job, just that right job. And to be honest, when an employer hires someone part-time, they don't have to pay the benefits.
Right.
And so that's why we end up with a lot of people in portfolio careers. I still honestly believe there's a lot of full-time work to be had out there, but for women who maybe are still raising their families and they can't go back full-time, there is a lot of part-time opportunities.
That's interesting. So you would basically encourage women to get as much education as possible, and when they do you also offer them help finding a career?
So do you mean like actually finding employment?
Yes, you have some type of...
So we will guide them through the process because we believe that we want to empower women to learn how to look for jobs on their own, but we will teach them. And I will just say that networking is the number one way that people find jobs. It just is the number. They say something like 85 to 90% of people find jobs through people that they've met, not through answering ads in the newspaper, not through sending out resumes raw. And so we teach people, how do you actually go through that? How do you build a resume? How do you send that out? How do you meet people? I used to, you know, with the younger students, all we talk about all the time is internship, 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 because that's your foot in the door. And you know what? If you're returning to education, it may be what you're going to need to do yourself. Is spend a little bit of time, because it's your way of finding out if an industry is what you think it is or if a career is what you want it to be.
Right.
So that you're not, in a way, I don't want to say wasting time, but maybe not spending the time that you have as wisely as you could.
That's
There
great.
used to be a career board at the college.
There
I actually,
did once upon a
I
time.
actually helped create that.
We thank you.
And then it bloomed. Do they have things like that anymore online for them?
So now it's online because the college has over 32,000 students. They're not all using the Career Center, of course. We could not actually handle it. We don't have a big enough staff. So we have a website which we have all employers are allowed to list for free. So it's for internships and employment. And then students, of course, can go on for free and look for both.
Okay, Vicki, you gave us the best
info.
information we could ever ask, and I know
Exactly.
that we agree, and so will our audience. So thank you so much for being with us.
You're welcome.
Yes,
Such
thank you.
valuable
Thank you.
information.
Thank you.
Thank you. We will be right back with our next guest.
Discover 30 years of opera in Santa Monica. Discover the Verdi Chorus.
We are now joined by Felicia Adams Kellum, PhD, the Executive Director of St. Joseph Center. Felicia, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
This is really, you do so much important work at the St. Joseph Center. Now, when a client comes to you and they're starting a new career, what is the first thing you make them focus on?
Well, when a woman comes to us, often she's had a very difficult time, and she is maybe questioning whether she can get back to work. So we really focus on instilling that sense of hope and having her get a sense of what she's capable of. And maybe for some time she's not been very sure about that. So we really start with her heart. We start with her esteem, and we think that's a very important first step.
Absolutely, and how do you go about doing that?
Well, I think part of this journey is about reconnecting to what worked. Inspirations, things that she did well, maybe hobbies. And for some of our clients, they've disconnected themselves from the past, so we need to help them explore. Sometimes it's just conversations, and sometimes we're getting them to think about what they might like to do, something they maybe dreamed of doing at some point. And so that's really where we begin, just building a relationship, a connection.
So do you find that they don't want to go back to what they used to do?
No, I think there's a mix of things. I think for a woman who's maybe had a hard time and experienced homelessness, maybe issues with addiction, she may have some fears of returning back to her previous work, and in some ways maybe they want to start anew. So it just depends on the experience that the individual has had.
What's the time span?
Oh, for some of our clients, they've been 10 years out of work. Wow. For some, they've been a year, some 6 months. It just depends on what impacted them prior to visiting us. Yeah.
Wow.
So it seems like, I mean, there's such a deep healing journey that each one of these women have to take. It strikes me that it's a soul journey. It's emotional, it's it's physical, it's spiritual. What would you say in your experience has been kind of that force that gives them that resilience? Is it their children? Is it like, what happens in that turning point?
Well, I think we have to find out what inspires that person. But I think our job as case managers, as helpers, is to have them see themselves in our eyes, if you will, and begin to inspire them. And sometimes it's our relationship with them that gets them motivated to try something new or different. For some women, absolutely, it's their children, it's their family. We've had a lot of women say, now my family can rely on me again.
Yeah.
Now we're in stable housing. And so definitely those things that inspire women every day, their children, loved ones. Yes.
Yeah, and actually I was at a breakfast with Becky and we'd seen some testimonials up on the stage.
It was actually hers.
It was her breakfast.
The Success Breakfast.
The Success
Westside
Breakfast.
Shelter
And I
Hunger
recall
Coalition,
a woman who went up there and, she was in an abuse situation, domestic violence situation. But it was amazing to see her go from victim to being empowered, to being like recognizing, understanding what happened to her, putting it to rest, and then rebuilding her life. And not staying in that victim place, which I would think a lot of women are prone to.
Right. And we don't want to simplify. It's a tough journey
Yes.
for different women, different aspects. But career and getting back to work is a big part of getting back on your feet and feeling independent and empowered again.
Right. And when you're building somebody back up, what are some of the resources that you offer your clients?
Well, at St. Joseph Center, we actually have a culinary training program, which we're very proud of, and it's 6 weeks in training with us, and then 4 weeks on externship. So for those folks, we are exposing them to the culinary arts and the food service industry so that they can garner the skills they need to acquire an entry-level position. And so not only are they getting the technical skills that you need to be successful in a kitchen or a restaurant, but also job search, resume writing, interview skills, conflict resolution, all the things that you need to be successful on a job. Yes.
Conflict resolution is something that I've never heard anybody offer. Can you explain that a little bit?
Well, I think for all of us, we are on the job and sometimes we are not feeling understood or maybe overlooked. And you need to know how to process your feelings about that. And for a woman who's getting back to work, who's maybe feeling a little unsure, she'll need to know how to cope with those feelings. And that's the conflict resolution. Sometimes it's internal conflict and sometimes it's between someone else and someone on the job or your boss, and you don't want to just walk off the job or not come back if you've had a bad day. So we need to help them work through that.
That's amazing. And I know that you also offer women who are financially getting back on their feet. You also have services for them.
Well, here's the thing. I mean, our services are free. And so for women who are looking for work, we will often expose them to the clothing closet so that they can pick out the items that they need to dress appropriately for an interview. We also have access to supports that get them housed if they've been down on their luck in that way. So there's lots of different ways that we provide women with the resources they need to get back on their feet, in addition to getting back to work.
Oh, that's amazing. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, so say, for instance, you're working with a woman. I know that you're instilling hope in them. How long before they actually let it set in and take it into motion?
Well, I think practice is a really important thing. I think that you may be re-inspired and have a glimmer of hope, but that I think the practice helps you get into your rhythm. And we believe the externship, where our students are actually on the job at a restaurant for 4 weeks on their own, giving it a try, maybe even making mistakes, but then we're there alongside, checking in with them, mentoring them through that process. So to answer your question, I think it depends. For some women, they get it pretty quickly, and for others, they need to practice. And they also need to know that they can return, and we are still there for them, helping them update resumes, helping them look for the next job.
Now, you work in groups, like groups of women, or?
Well, our classes are actually mixed. Both men and women are accepted into our culinary training program, and throughout the agency we provide case management services to women and men. But obviously for this particular piece of really talking about women and women with children, obviously our culinary training program is a space where we've rebuilt a lot of lives.
That's extraordinary.
Fantastic.
Really is. And just listening to you explain all this, I'm thinking of the resiliency of the human spirit. You know, just the power in that is very inspiring in and of itself. Absolutely. Wow.
Besides having group classes, you also meet with your clients on an individual basis?
Yes. Well, we have 2 gateway programs, but one where we meet with a lot of women is through our pantry services. We serve about 400 to 500 individuals weekly. And so many times women who are housed but really struggling financially or maybe out of work will come and visit our pantry once a week, and we develop connections there. And that's where we often find out that they've lost a job or at risk of being homeless. And so we have one-on-one case management meetings that kind of goes through things with them in a more in-depth manner and try to figure out how we can find some solutions to their difficulties. And obviously the job search process and resources that connect them to work is a big part of that.
I would think the mental health also, right?
Oh,
I mean, that's
absolutely.
massive, right? I mean, that key component
Yes.
to break patterns, set new patterns, new beginnings, and put them in motion.
We're so appreciative of the collaborations we have with the Department of Mental Health, and we actually have a number of contracts that allow us to provide mental health services. And from individuals that are coming with minor depression to people who are severely mentally ill, who have the capacity to work if they're stabilized. I mean, that is a big part of our work and the return to work.
That's fantastic. I know you're also very proactive for the Hunger Coalition. Can you tell us about that?
Well, the West Side Shelter Hunger Coalition has an amazing success breakfast every year, and
Becky and I, that was when we were talking.
and that celebration is really about the return to work, the return to housing, the return to life. And we see so many of our clients, and we, you know, in the coalition we have over 30 members, and we share clients, and oftentimes it will start with someone getting off the streets into rehabilitation, or they may return to school, and collectively we will work to get individuals and families housed and working. And so the West Side Shelter Hunger Coalition is a big part of renewal for many of our clients.
Do you rely strictly on donations?
Oh, well, yes, we rely on donations. We also rely on government contracts and a number of public services that help us to bring people back to where they need to be stable and independent adults. So the West Side Shelter Hunger Coalition, as I said, is made up of 30 different members, but St. Joseph Center relies on public and private donations.
Well, after listening to you, I know that we are definitely going to lend our support any way that we possibly can, because you are fantastic what you're doing for the community and for women. Alicia, thank you so much for joining us. This was truly a pleasure.
So
pleasure.
I appreciate
educating.
Yes, thank you so much. We'd
you.
like to thank all of our guests today. Fantastic. It takes a lot of work to get a new job, but as you can see, the support is out there so that you can have success in your new career. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.